This is a short video just to get us back into what is factoring and what are the different types. This is important that you watch before you do section 8.4 because 8.4 and 8.5 are all about factoring, and if you can't factor, 8.4 and 8.5 are kind of tough. So we wanted to give you just a refresher quickly on factoring. I'm going to start with the first one, and I'm only going to pick a couple from each, but if you feel like you need a little bit of extra practice, maybe before you come to class, before you take the quiz on 8.1 and 8.2, that you finish this and see, then we can check some of your answers as we go through. So let's take a look. I'm going to start with this first one. So I'm going to do this one right here, and I'm looking for the greatest common monomial. Means what can you pull out of each? Well, if I look at 8 and 20, the biggest number between them is 4. And they both have an x, so I can take out a 4x. So what do you have left? Well, 4x times 2x makes the 8x squared. And 4x times 5, a positive 5, gives you 20x. And so the idea of pulling out a greatest common monomial is the idea that you're basically undistributing, and you're just trying to figure out what did it look like originally. And so that's the first one. I'm going to come down here to this one, and I'm only going to do 2 of them here. And I want to look at what do these have in common. And so I look at the numbers first. 9, 15, and 6. The biggest number in common is a 3. And then I look at the x's. There are 3 here, only 2 here, only 1 here. Because there's only 1 in each of them, I can only pull 1 x out. I have 2 y's here, 1 y, 2 y's. Because again, I only have a single y, I can only pull a single y out. So the numbers, you take the biggest number in common. The variables, you take the smallest number that's in each of them. Okay, and if I pull this out, 3 times 3 gets you 9. I had 3 x's, and there's 1 that I pulled out, so I need x squared left. I had 2 y's, and I pulled out 1, so I have 1 y left. Plus 3 times 5 gets me 15. I had 2 x's, so I need 1 more, and I already took the y out. Minus 3 times 2 gets me 6. I took the x out, and I had 2 y's. If I only took 1 y out, I have 1 y left. And so this is the idea of factoring out a greatest common factor, or the greatest common monomial, is basically what can you take out of each of them and what would be left if you took that out. So that's the first type. Second type is basic idea of factoring, where we're going to split this into 2 binomials. So you're looking for 2 groups of parentheses. And so I just want to pick a couple of them. I'm going to start with the first one though. And I'm going to look at x squared, we know, is x times x. The question is, how do you get 16? Well, you could do 8 times 2 or 4 times 4. And the reason I picked 4 and 4 is because that adds up to 8. So I know that I can get an x plus 4 and an x plus 4. But because they're the same, we want you to write this as x plus 4 squared. Okay. Let's move down a couple. Let's try this one. X squared, again, we know is x and x. 30, how do you get 30? 3 and 10, but that can't add to 11. But 6 and 5 can. 6 plus 5 gets 11. So you have an x plus 6 and an x plus 5. Okay, and again, these should sound pretty familiar. Let's go 2 more down. Let's do this one. Again, x squared is x and x. How do you get 63? Well, 63 is 9 and 7. The problem is this 63 is negative. So one of these has to be negative, but I want it to add to a positive 2, which means the bigger number has to be positive if I want to end with a positive. So this should be a negative 7. So I have an x plus 9, and because it's a negative 7, I say x minus 7. Okay. Again, there's kind of a couple of them, and I don't want to do too much. This is just kind of an overview. So that's the first type. I'm going to go back to the next type. So let me slide this down. This is when you have a number in front of the x squared, and this gets a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to look at 2x squared is a 2x and an x. How do you get 3? The only way is 1 and 3. The problem is because the 7 is negative, these both have to be negative. So So I'm going to write out my 2x and leave a space, and then an x and leave a space. And our goal is to somehow add to -7. And so I'm going to do guess and check is what they call. If I do 2 times -1, I get -2. And if I do x times -3, I get -3x. -2 and -3 only gets me -5. So that means the 2 has to be multiplied by -3 to get -6. And then another -1x to get -7. So 2 has to be multiplied by the -3, and when we FOIL, the -3 has to go on this side then, so 2 times -3, and a -1 here. Now, some of you also learned the snip method, and I can discuss that more in class. But if you remember the snip method and you like that better, please go ahead and use that. I'm only going to do one more. Two more. I'm actually going to do this next one. This one is a difference of squares. 25 is a perfect square and 49 is a perfect square. And because there's only 2 terms, it's called a difference of squares. Well, 25 is 5 times 5, and we put an x with it because we have x squared. 49 is 7 times 7. Since it's -49, one of those has to be negative. So my factoring is 5x plus 7 and 5x minus 7. Okay? All right, last one I'm going to do. This 3x squared plus 31x. 3x squared, again, I'm going to guess and check, is a 3x and an x. 56 is 7 times 8, and that's the one we normally think of, so I'm going to try that one first. If I do 3x times 7, I get 21. 21 plus 8 is only 29, so that's not going to work. So let's go the other way. If I do 3x times 8, I get 24, plus a 7x makes 31x. So we want it to FOIL like this. So when I write it, I'm going to say 3x, and it's going to be multiplied by the positive 8, so that goes on the outside, plus 7, because then the 7x gets it here. Okay, again, this is called guess and check, but if you know snip method and you like that better, please feel free. Okay, and so that's kind of the idea going through. I'm going to leave the last chunk actually for later, but if you look at it again, we wanted to give you the basic idea of some of the factoring. Please try a few more, and even try some of these ones down here. I would look at, if I were going to do these on my own, I would look at these 3. Okay, these are the 3 you're going to see the most often. So if I were you, and I would please try this, to do those 3 before you get to class, and maybe you want to go back and try some of the other ones as well. So that's it for the factoring view. Again, I wanted to be short and sweet, but I just wanted to give you an indicator of some of the factoring stuff that we did in Algebra 2A.